Hello? Hello, Bryan?
Yeah, just a minute. Hey, listen, sorry, I don't have a lot of time. It's Bryan from This, That, and the Other. Look, okay, I want to tell you everything. I want to tell you the truth about wood. You want to know about the real stuff? You want to know why the earth is hollow and why we're being run by aliens? You want to know about the stuff they're putting in your Gatorade and why you should be eating your dogs and why renewable resources are a lie and we're living inside of a hologram. And I'll tell you all this, but you have to listen to This, That, and the Other. You have to subscribe on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher. Don't tell Sam, though. Don't tell him.
What are you doing? Are you making an ad without me?
No, listen, I gotta go. Subscribe to This, That, and the Other.
You bastard.
9/11 was a lie. What happened to buildings? Yo. What's up? And welcome to What's Hood with FC. I'm your boy, Hawaiian Bryan, from This, That, and the Other, filling in for FC, Forever Cabron, one more time. And we hope you guys are having a great day. Let's get those shout outs out the way. First and foremost, I'm going to give a shout out to Binge on This, the home of the network for such great shows like This, That, and the Other, Happy News with Perry Kurtz, What's Hood with FC, Reading Ronin with yours truly, and now Roll 420 is the new Dungeons and Dragons show coming to and only available on Binge on This. So make sure that you guys go out there and check it out and show the homies some love. I hope everybody's doing okay. I hope everybody's doing well. I know quarantine is a little crazy for everybody right now, so I just urge you to stick it out, to hang in there. You know, it's almost done. Make sure you're just like calling the families and I think what's really important about this time is that if you haven't done it by now, I'm not saying it's necessarily too late, but I'm hoping that you took this time to really try and buckle down and figure out exactly figure out exactly what you're trying to do sort of with life, with your mission, just kind of how you plan on operating life as you see it. A lot of people, I just feel like a lot of people didn't get an opportunity or a chance to do that, especially the ones who were taken too soon, specifically from COVID. But I hope you had an okay quarantine. I hope things were okay. I certainly hope that when you get back out into the real world and things go back to normal, that you're able to continue your life and go right back to work without any major issues. But to always just keep your head up, keep your head up, stay strong, do the best you can, be a nice person. That's pretty much the best advice that I could possibly give anybody during this time. And again, 20, 30 years from now, as we're going to look back at it and we're going to laugh because we'll be in the middle of World War V or whatever, and we'll have wished that we had stayed longer in COVID days. But for now, I hope everything goes well for you guys. I hope you and yours are in good health, and I hope everybody's ready to go back to work and kind of get back to the swing of things. With that being said, today obviously is by the time you guys are hearing this, or heard this, it is Cinco de Mayo, or the day after Cinco de Mayo. So I figured what better time? Sorry, guys. Your boy's been busy all day. What better time to break out a little bit of history, as basic as it may be, than on Cinco de Mayo. So today we're going to talk sort of about what Cinco de Mayo is, how it came about, why, kind of why it is even observed. And hopefully by the end of it, you'll get a better understanding kind of why the Mexican culture looks to Cinco de Mayo and the 16th of September, Mexican Independence Day. And so we'll clarify some of that out for yous. So Cinco de Mayo is obviously the 5th of May in Spanish. It's a celebration, pretty much commemorating the Mexican army's victory over the French Empire at the Battle of Puebla back in 1862. So, what you got to understand, just to start off with, back in the day, Napoleon III, who was currently, who was in charge of France at the time. Yeah. God damn, I'm so sorry, guys. So this is what it comes down to, right? In 1861, a gentleman by the name of Benito Juarez, a lawyer and a member of the indigenous Zapotec tribe, was elected president of Mexico. Without jumping in too deep with it or going into it, and you guys can go check it out on your own. You guys know that this show is basically just an introduction to these events and to sort of this historical, explanation. But if you guys do want to learn more, obviously you can just go to Google and pop in Cinco de Mayo. But Benito Juarez gets made president of Mexico in 1861. At that time, financially, the country is not doing well. It's not great. Internally, Mexico's been fighting with each other in small factions over the past, 5 years. And because of these things, and due to these circumstances, the new president, this lawyer and this member of this indigenous tribe, was essentially forced to default on payments to the European government. Essentially, it was just like, look, we can't pay it. I don't know what to tell you. There's nothing we can do. So obviously, at that point, Europe's like, yo, hold the fuck up, dog. Like, we don't roll like that, cause especially after America whooped their ass, you know what I mean? And they were like, nah, we can't let this shit happen again, you know what I mean? So France, Britain, and Spain sent naval ships out to Veracruz, Mexico, essentially demanding that they get repaid, And really what it is this has a lot to do with the French intervention in Mexico, which happens after the Mexican-American War. And this is between 1846 and 1840. And I don't want to dive too deep into it because then it turns into just this crazy story. But what happens is these wars, like I said, they bankrupted everybody, and because of that, they essentially were like, nah, there's nothing we can do about it. So France sends out their ships along with Britain and Spain. They land at Veracruz, and they move inward towards Mexico City in 1861. At this point, the French army, which stands at about 8,000 people, essentially starts attacking the Mexican army, who are, severely underfunded and undertrained. Yet on the 5th of May, in 1862, the Mexicans are able to defeat the French army. Now, this is big mainly for a few things, right? Number one, it's about 2,000 to 4,000 men, just indigenous Mexicans and men of mixed ancestry. You know what I mean? And this is native, this is native Mesoamericans. This is Mexicans. This is even some Texas-born people, including General Ignacio Zaragoza. So you're talking about a lot of people. You're talking about a big old melting pot, not to use that phrase willy-nilly, but genuinely, you can say that genuinely in this particular sense, because it was everybody in this particular sense trying to drive the French out, and like I said, between 2,000 and 4,000 men, depending on which sources you go by. And they went to Puebla, and they pretty much just held that son of a bitch town down. They fortified the town, and they went from daybreak to early evening. And by the end of the battle, the French left, and they had lost nearly 500 soldiers out of their 8,000, while the Mexicans had lost fewer than 100 in the clash. Now, this battle in itself isn't necessarily considered a huge strategic win, because later on, down the line, they end up losing. The Mexican people end up losing regardless. But, because of the Battle of Puebla on May 5th, what this does is it sort of riles up a little bit more recognition, as well as to, it opens up an avenue for military support and, frankly, political pressure from the United States, who was finally in a position to kind of help people out, their neighbors out, because the Civil War had just ended. And so they were able to come in and sort of aid and help out, forcing France to leave. And and a small battle, relatively small battle. Nothing big. It's honestly just a hard fought battle. A decisive turn in Mexican independence history? I wouldn't say so. It's not a federal holiday. It's not a federal holiday. Pardon me, in Mexico. Nothing too big. Honestly, Cinco de Mayo seems to be represented more in the United States by the American culture. And so it just, I don't know, you can, just so that we kind of, I want to just, so that we put a little pin as far as Cinco de Mayo is concerned. Because again, after this happens, less than a year later, France sends 30,000 troops at this point. Were able to easily defeat the Mexican army and capture Mexico City, essentially installing Emperor Maximilian I as ruler of Mexico, the French emperor at the time. And this just keeps on going back and forth. It's all the same in Love and War, my friend. France held on to their position in their territory for about 3 years, in Mexico, from 1864 to 1867. And at that point, like I said, the U.S. kind of shows up and they're able to sort of help Mexico and push them out. From there, Mexico's able to reinstall a new government at around 1860, 1867. I think overall, what it most shines a light on in Mexican culture really has to do with Mexico not being allowed to be defeated easily by the French. If Mexico had not defeated the French in Puebla, France would have gone on to aid the Confederate States of America in the Civil War. And if you really sit down and think about that, really just take a second and think about that, how France was willing to throw their back behind the Confederacy. And if they had managed to come in from the south and move up from the north and take Texas and take all of these ball players who really weren't on the side of anybody in particular. I mean, they obviously, they weren't as deeply grounded in slavery as North Carolina, Virginia, South Carolina, Georgia. So you can only imagine sort of what could have possibly happened if France had pushed through Puebla had been lost, and they had managed to make their way. I mean, you're talking about maybe an extended civil war. You're talking about an alternate timeline where, I don't know, your boy never had a podcast show. You know what I'm saying? Was never allowed to. But that's kind of what happens, and it's a lot of people get Cinco de Mayo confused with the Mexican Independence Day. That is not the case. Mexican Independence Day is the 16th of September. And if you guys have been listening to What's Hood since the beginning, then you know What's Hood has talked about El Grito de Dolores, the Cry of Dolores, which is our buddy Miguel Hidalgo y Costilla's famous speech, essentially the call to arms that mounted the declaration of war against the Spanish. And a lot of people get that confused. They think that Cinco de Mayo is in honor of Mexican Independence Day, and that's not the case. The average Mexican doesn't necessarily observe Cinco de Mayo as as intently as Americans do. And I'm not saying that's a good or a bad thing. The reason Cinco de Mayo is even paid attention to is mainly because Chicanos here in in UCLA and in Colombia, in California, um, identified with the victory of the Mexicans over those European invaders. Why Chicanos activists? I don't know, bro. And again, I'm the wrong guy to be filling in for this show. I'll be the first one to admit it. You know, I mean, I don't, I just don't know. It's odd to me. Oh, it's an important battle. Obviously, it's something that has been celebrated in California since 1863, virtually being ignored in Mexico. I think it carries such a fine balance. I think you take into account just how mixed that army was. How potentially diverse it was. And like I said, Texas people, Mexicans, indigenous Mesoamericans. I mean, who else knows who was part of that? Freed slaves. It's really just hard to tell. Again, what could have potentially happened. And I think maybe that has a lot to do with why people really celebrated in California, even as far back in 1863. I don't know, and it makes sense, even if it isn't the day of necessarily Mexican independence, it was a victory. It was a victory, and even back in 1863, they'll talk about how when they started hearing news about this, Mexican miners, they were ecstatic, they were happy, they were shooting their guns off in the air, they were, they were just as happy as the ones who survived the battle out in Puebla. So as I speak more out loud and I say it, I understand it, and I get it, and I can certainly relish in the idea that our community, both Latin and Hispanic communities, can kind of get together, even if it is just for sort of like a misrepresented date in history. But I'm not Chicano, so I don't know jack shit about it, bro. I don't know nothing about nothing, dog. Honestly, yeah, but and again, I wish I knew more about it. And while I did my research, it just seemed kind of pretty basic. Really, the main reason I wanted to bring this up, especially on Cinco de Mayo, was because people tend to confuse it. People tend to confuse it with Mexican Independence Day, and it's not. It's not Mexican Independence Day. It's a completely different day. It's a completely different event. Cinco de Mayo is literally a battle. It is based on a battle, in Mexico, and that is why it is honored. So, that's it, man. As far as my relationship with Cinco de Mayo myself, I never, back in the day, it was really just like a drinking holiday. I'll be the first one to admit that it was just a sort of like another reason to go out there and sort of celebrate. The idea of drinking in the name of victory is so much more appealing than drinking in the name of sadness. So I can understand why so many people get hammered, because it's so much fun, and I miss it. I do, but I can't say that I hold it in reverence as I do. I don't know, the pozoles or I don't know. I don't know. Cinco de Mayo to me just doesn't seem. It just kind of seems. It seems very whitewashed. It's kind of like Easter. Like Easter sort of lost its groove a little bit, as far as the idea of rebirth and the life cycle, and we all know that Easter was essentially plopped on top of the pagan holiday beforehand, and so it's just essentially mimicking the cycles that already existed in the universe, and in culture. So yeah, Cinco de Mayo really, it's just really not, not that big for me on my end. I think it's more important for diehard Americans. Um, and that's about it, man. I mean, I wish I could give you guys a little bit more information on it, but I mean, it really when it boils down to it, it's just that's it, you know. And that's all, guys. So with that being said, you know, my final thoughts, bro, is I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. I know it's a little I know it was a little bit all over the place. I mean, just being upfront with you guys, it's like 11:30 right now. I just had the craziest deja vu. But pardon me, I just had the craziest deja vu. But and I'm sorry I keep yawning. And I'm sorry that I'm the one filling in on what's hood right now. FC is gonna be back next week. My job as the producer is pretty much just to hold the fort down as best as I can. So please, you know, just know that this isn't gonna be the regular sort of thing from here on out. I'm not good at this show. FC, you know, this is FC's baby, and I definitely look forward to him coming back. So that's it, guys. Thank you guys so much for listening to this episode of What's Hood with me, the real Hawaiian Bryan. Make sure that you guys follow us on Instagram at Binge on This channel. We're on YouTube at Binge on This. Make sure that you guys check out the rest of the shows, This, That, and the Other. Happy News with Harry Kurtz, The Reading Ronin, Sam of All Trades, Olden Times TV on YouTube. Our new show, Rule 420s, our Dungeons and Dragons show that's coming out. And make sure that you guys review us on iTunes, CastBox, Stitcher, Spotify, anywhere that you guys find the show. And just stay safe. We'll see you guys at the next light. Peace.